We are optimizing our workforce. Everyone leave here, effective immediately.
Then I think it's time to move on.
The security gates clicked shut behind us, hundreds of us like someone had just pressed delete on an entire department. No warning, no meeting, no memo. 1 second I was scanning my badge, and the next. I was standing in the parking lot holding a cardboard box, surrounded by a silent crowd that looked like survivors of a corporate evacuation drill. No one spoke. No one had to. The disbelief on our faces was loud enough. A giant screen mounted in the lobby flickered on, and our CEO appeared in a perfectly lit live stream. "We are optimizing our workforce for efficiency," he announced, smiling like he had just cured world hunger. I stood there thinking. Optimizing. Really, are we sure this isn't just accidentally deleting the people who actually keep the place running? But of course, sarcasm doesn't count as severance. How are you feeling watching this unfold, shocked, annoyed, or just shaking your head like I did? And hey, where are you listening from right now? Pause with me for a moment. I stumbled on a fact: 95% of you are listening but haven't subscribed yet. Maybe you forgot. Or maybe it feels like one tap doesn't matter. But that tiny tap keeps nights like these alive, letting stories like this reach more people. Then came the real punchline. I checked my phone, hoping for some explanation. I found it just not where I expected. Gmail had shoved my termination notice straight into the spam folder. "Regret to inform you," the subject line said. To be fair, it did look exactly like a scam email. The system must have thought even the phrasing sounded suspicious. Honestly, so did I. I walked toward the gate, each step heavier than the last, and dialed my mother. "I'm fine," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. She believed me. I almost believed me too. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. A message from my 9-year-old son lit up the screen. "Dad, are you coming home for pancakes? I burned one, but the second one is good." I stared at the text for a moment, and an unexpected smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. The world had just kicked me in the ribs, but somehow, his burnt pancake made the hit land softer. I looked back at the building, its polished glass, its spotless logo, its suddenly locked doors, and thought, well, if this is the beginning, it's one hell of an opening line. The real story hadn't started yet, but something inside me quietly knew it was about to. The strange thing about the morning after a mass firing is how ordinary everything looks. I walked into the cheapest cafe I could find, mostly because it was the only place open early enough for people who'd just lost their jobs and didn't know what else to do. I sat by the window with a paper cup of coffee, so bitter it tasted like it had personal issues with me. Maybe that's why it matched my mood perfectly: flat, empty, and trying not to spill over. I kept replaying yesterday in my head, not because I wanted to, but because the silence made it impossible to think about anything else. The cardboard box still sat in my backseat. My badge, now useless, was tucked inside it, and my pride felt like it had fallen out somewhere between the lobby and the parking lot. The first vibration of my phone snapped me out of the fog. A former coworker texted, "Systems crashing again. Every hour something goes down. No one knows how to reset anything." I stared at the message, feeling a dull, familiar sting. Of course it was falling apart. They fired the people who actually knew how things worked. And yet, instead of satisfaction, all I felt was that hollow ache behind the ribs, the kind that comes after disappointment has stopped surprising you. On impulse, I opened my laptop. My company account should have been shut down by now, but for some reason I could still get into the internal calendar system. Maybe IT forgot, or maybe they were too busy putting out fires. Either way, curiosity pulled me in. I clicked through the meeting archives, trying to piece together where everything went wrong. Then I saw it. A recurring event labeled Project Reset, workforce alignment review scheduled 3 months before the firing, every other Tuesday, same room, same time, and one of those sessions, just my luck, was the exact meeting I had accidentally booked over last quarter. For a moment I just stared at the screen, then let out a breathless, humorless laugh. So I basically scheduled my own execution. I muttered, "Perfect." My fingers tightened around the cup, and that's when I noticed the faint blue smudge of ink still on my hand from yesterday's final meeting, the one where I thought we were planning next year's expansion. 12 years of building systems, covering emergencies, training new hires, and navigating chaos, all reduced to one email that Gmail labeled as spam. I closed the laptop slowly, almost gently, like shutting a door on a chapter I never agreed to end. The cafe around me buzzed with small talk and clattering dishes, but inside, everything felt muted, like the world had turned the volume down just for me. I didn't know what would come next. I only knew something was shifting quietly, painfully, but undeniably shifting. I didn't plan on seeing anyone that night. I only meant to grab one drink, sit in a dark corner, and pretend the world wasn't crumbling. But when I pushed open the door of O'Malley's, the loudest, stickiest bar in town, I spotted 3 familiar faces at a table near the back, then 5, then 9. It looked less like a casual get-together and more like a support group for the recently and aggressively unemployed. They waved me over with that half-laugh, half-grimace expression we all seemed to share. As soon as I sat down, the stories started flowing, each one more ridiculous than the last. One coworker had been fired because his energy didn't match the company's new direction. Another was told the CEO's nephew needed the position for professional growth. Someone else got axed through a voicemail that the system helpfully auto-transcribed into nonsense symbols. Every time a new story dropped, the table erupted in laughter that sounded a little too sharp around the edges. I felt something unclench in my chest. These were my people, the ones who stayed late, fixed the unfixable, and somehow kept the company's chaos running like a barely functioning machine. Seeing them again was like being reunited with the only folks who spoke the same strange, stressful language. Then came the twist. A young guy I barely recognized slid into the seat beside me. He looked about 12, but technically he was 23 and had only worked at the company for 6 weeks before yesterday's mass firing. He tugged at his hoodie string, cleared his throat, and leaned toward me. Connor. Right, yeah, I said. He nodded, swallowed hard, and whispered, So, do you know how to file for unemployment? Because you look like someone who's had life kick him a few times already. The entire table went silent for half a heartbeat, then exploded. Beer almost came out of someone's nose. I laughed too, mostly because it was the most brutally honest thing anyone had said all week. The kid turned beet red, waving his hands. I didn't mean it like you just seem like a guy who, knows things. It's fine, I said, still laughing. Sit down. First lesson, never trust HR to send you the right forms. As the night dragged deeper into the noise and neon, our laughter softened into something warmer. Even in the bitterness, there was a sense of strange comfort, like we were all pieces of a machine the company had tossed out without realizing those pieces were the machine. And in that haze of spilled beer and shared frustration, an unexpected truth settled over me. We were the people who made everything work. They could replace our names on paper, but not what we did, not who we were. The morning after our makeshift reunion, I tried to force myself back into a normal routine. My version of normal, apparently, meant wandering through a grocery store at 9 o'clock with a shopping basket full of things I didn't need and a head full of things I didn't want to think about. I was standing in the dairy aisle, holding a carton of milk like it contained answers. When my phone buzzed in my pocket, I nearly ignored it. After getting fired, most calls either come from relatives pretending not to worry or job boards pretending they have opportunities. But the name on the screen froze me. Ridgewell Logistics Client Director, one of our biggest accounts, the kind of customer the company bragged about in every earnings meeting. I answered slowly. Hello, Connor. The voice on the other end sounded hurried, strained. Thank God you picked up. I straightened without meaning to. Is everything all right? Not even close, he said. Your old team? The new guys. They don't know the basics. The entire routing system's been down for 48 hours. No one can fix it. No one even knows where to start. I blinked at the milk carton in my hand, suddenly aware of how absurd this moment was. Critical systems failing, supply lines halted across 3 states. And here I was, in sneakers and sweatpants, standing next to discounted yogurt. I'm not with the company anymore, I reminded him gently. I know, he answered. That's why I'm calling. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. What do you need from me? There was a short pause, one of those pauses where life shifts direction without telling you. Then he asked, quietly but clearly, if you ever decide to start your own company, can you give us a number to reach you? I didn't speak. I couldn't. The refrigerator hum behind me became the only sound in the entire aisle. It wasn't a request for help, not an offer, not even a hint. It was trust, pure, unprompted trust. He continued, "We'll stay where we are for now, but we can't rely on people who don't understand our system. If you build something, we'll take the call." My fingers tightened around the milk carton until the plastic creaked. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said. "Just keep us in mind, and don't wait too long." When the call ended, I stayed exactly where I was, staring at my reflection in the glass door of the dairy case. One moment I'd been drifting, trying to make sense of the wreckage. The next, a door I didn't know existed cracked open in front of me. Hope isn't loud. It doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers through a phone in the dairy aisle, and in that moment, holding a carton of milk and a future I didn't ask for, I felt something shift quietly, but unmistakably inside me. I didn't expect the garage to feel like the beginning of anything. It smelled like dust, old paint, and someone's forgotten gym shoes. But when the 12 of us stepped inside, each one carrying laptops, extension cords, or the kind of determination you only get after being kicked out of a company we built with our bare hands, something inside me flickered back to life. Not a spark. Not yet. But a steady pulse. A reminder that losing everything can sometimes clear enough space to start something better. We pushed 2 cardboard boxes together and declared it a desk. Someone plugged in a battered coffee maker that roared like a malfunctioning helicopter. Another person opened a greasy box of discount pizza and said, "Lunch. It wasn't glamorous, not even close, but it was ours. No suits, no fake smiles, no HR scripts, just people who actually knew what they were doing." As we set up laptops and argued over Wi-Fi passwords, I felt an unfamiliar rush move through me, hope mixed with adrenaline, wrapped in the strange freedom of starting with nothing but each other. The kid who'd asked me how to file for unemployment was the most energetic among us. He darted around, taping extension cords to the floor and passing out soda cans like he was running a marathon. Then, out of nowhere, he cleared his throat. Guys, he muttered, pulling out an envelope. "I know this isn't much, but I want to invest, in whatever we're building." We stared at him. "You want to what I asked?" He shrugged, cheeks turning pink. "I just believe in you all. And in him." He nodded at me. "If I'm going to bet on anybody, it's the people who actually kept the company alive." It wasn't a big amount. It didn't need to be. That moment his trust hit deeper than any check could. And just like that, our first investor wasn't a millionaire, but a kid who'd barely been given a chance before being thrown out with the rest of us, minutes later, as if the universe wanted to add fuel to the fire. My phone buzzed with an anonymous message, a single audio file, no text, no name. I pressed play. The voice was unmistakable, our former CEO, if they start a competing company. He scoffed. "They'll be dead in 2 months. None of them have the backbone to survive without us." For a moment, the garage fell completely silent. No coffee machine rumbling, no typing, no rustling pizza boxes, just 12 people absorbing the insult. And then, as if on cue, laughter erupted loud, sharp, and beautifully defiant. "Dead in 2 months," someone snorted. "Let's see who dies first." Another said, "The tape didn't discourage us. It ignited us." Right there, between 2 cardboard boxes and an engine that wouldn't start, we laid out the blueprint a company built on complete transparency, clear pricing, honest communication, 0 hidden fees, everything the old place refused to be. And as we worked late into the night, I felt it clearly. We weren't rebuilding what we lost. We were building what should have existed all along. The funny thing about signing your first official contract as a brand new company is that it never looks the way you imagine. There was no polished office, no smiling receptionist, no mahogany table. Just me, standing in a dusty garage, wearing an old paint-stained t-shirt I'd found on the floor that morning. My hair wasn't cooperating. The Wi-Fi kept dropping, and the contract was displayed on a laptop sitting on 2 stacked cardboard boxes. But despite all that, when the customer said, "Connor, we're ready to move forward," I felt something warm and steady unfurl inside me, like confidence finally deciding to come home. We went through the paperwork line by line. The client, a director I'd worked with for years, didn't bother hiding his frustration with my former employer. "The new team has no idea what they're doing," he muttered. "We can't survive another week of chaos." When the final digital signature appeared, he leaned toward the camera and lowered his voice. "Listen, We'd prefer if this stayed off the radar for now. Last thing we need is your old CEO throwing a tantrum. We're moving quietly, no drama, no noise. I almost laughed out loud. Trust me, I said. The last thing I want is drama. He raised a brow. Connor, you are the drama. That man's blood pressure probably spikes every time someone mentions your name. The call ended, and I just stood there for a second, staring at the signed contract. Our first one. The kind of milestone everyone tells you will feel huge, and somehow, in that little garage, surrounded by peeling paint and tangled wires, it felt even bigger. I stepped outside to tell the team. They were sitting on overturned buckets, devouring cheap pizza from a greasy box and passing around cans of store-brand cola when I announced we'd landed our first client. They didn't cheer, they howled. It echoed off the concrete walls, raw and real. We didn't have champagne, so someone cracked open another can of cola and held it up like a trophy. To starting from nothing, he said. To building something better. I replied. That's when my phone buzzed again. At first, I thought it was the client double-checking something. But when I opened the message, all the carbonation in my soda seemed to freeze mid-bubble. Dude, Company X is down. Like, completely down everything. Someone deleted a protocol they didn't think was important. Total system collapse. Another message came immediately after. Guess the newbies shouldn't have touched the core settings. I read it twice, then again, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating from excitement. My old company, 3 floors of servers, dozens of clients, years of structure brought to its knees by one inexperienced employee clicking delete on the wrong line of code. Behind me, someone asked. Everything all right? I turned around slowly, unable to hide the grin stretching across my face. Oh, it's better than all right, I said. Looks like the cracks just turned into a crater. The team leaned in, listening closely. And gentlemen, I added, lifting my soda can like a toast. That was only the first contract. The morning after we signed that first contract felt different, lighter somehow, like the garage itself had taken a deep breath with us. Even the dusty sunlight slipping through the cracked window looked brighter. We'd spent half the night helping our first client stabilize their system, and the fact that we pulled it off with folding chairs and borrowed equipment only made the victory sweeter. I walked in still holding a half-eaten breakfast sandwich, expecting a slow, steady day. I didn't expect the avalanche. It started with a call from the large client who'd signed with us the day before. I braced myself for a complaint. Old habits die hard, but instead, I heard laughter on the other end. The relieved kind. Connor, he said, your team fixed in 4 hours what the other guys struggled with for 48. Why didn't we switch sooner? I opened my mouth to answer, but he beat me to it. By the way, just giving you a heads up, our partners have been asking about you. Keep your phone close. I hung up, confused but curious. A few minutes later, the first partner company called, then another, then 2 more. All small, all connected to the big client. Each sounded equally exhausted, equally fed up, equally desperate for competence. They didn't ask for demos or proposals. They just said the same thing in different tones. We heard you know what you're doing. I kept waiting for the moment when it would slow down, some pause, some breath, some sign that the world wasn't about to tilt completely in our direction. But every time I thought the streak had ended. Another call came through. It was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. By noon, our whiteboard. If you could call an old shower board, a whiteboard was full of new project names. The team kept looking at me like I was the one responsible for summoning clients out of thin air. But the truth was becoming clearer with each request. We weren't stealing customers. The company we left behind was giving them away. Late in the afternoon, when my voice was almost gone from answering calls, I finally got a moment to breathe. That's when a small client, one we barely remembered working with back in the old days, called in with a quiet but urgent tone. Connor, he whispered, like someone might be listening. You didn't hear this from me, but the entire network, you know, all 17 companies in our chain, they're planning to switch to you. Every single one of them. I actually sat down. All 17. Why, he snorted. Because your old company doesn't know what it's doing anymore. They're begging us to stay, but we'd rather work with the people who actually built the system. After the call ended, I stared at the dusty garage floor, trying to process the weight of his words. 17 companies, a full chain, a complete migration. My heartbeat picked up, fast and fierce. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a fluke. This was momentum. And for the first time since losing everything. I felt something electric rush through me, the thrill of watching an empire fall because it forgot who kept it standing. I knew things were getting bad over at my old company, but I didn't realize just how bad until 7:30 the next morning. I was halfway through reviewing a new client's onboarding checklist when a message popped up from an unfamiliar personal email. The subject line read, "You need to see this hilarious." Normally, I don't open anything with the word hilarious before coffee, but curiosity won. A former coworker, still stuck inside the sinking ship, had forwarded something sensitive. It was an email from the CEO. At first glance, it looked like the usual corporate damage control nonsense team. The situation is fully under control. Please reassure all partners and maintain confidence, but attached below, it likely forgotten. Or maybe never deleted was the draft version, the one he apparently meant to revise before sending, and that draft was a masterpiece. All caps, half sentences, creative insults I'd never heard before. Paragraphs blaming everyone from interns to senior managers to the incompetent group of former employees who clearly sabotaged us, which was almost flattering. Considering we hadn't touched a single system, they were collapsing all on their own. I read every word slowly, the way someone savors a dessert they didn't order but were delighted to receive anyway. There was no anger in me, no vindictive thrill, just a quiet, razor-sharp satisfaction. Watching him unravel without any interference from us felt cleaner than any revenge plot could have ever been. A few minutes later, another message came from the same coworker. Told you it was worth opening. He's losing it. Thought you'd enjoy the show. I didn't reply. Instead, I dragged the email thread into a folder I'd created earlier that week. I labeled it The Theater, because honestly, that's exactly what it was, pure performance. Loud, dramatic, panicked, and entirely disconnected from reality. And reality was brutal. Clients were fleeing. The system was breaking faster than they could patch it. The new hires they brought in to replace us were quitting, overwhelmed by the avalanche of problems. Every rumor we'd heard sounded worse the next day, like someone was speedrunning a corporate meltdown. Despite the chaos, I kept my emotions contained. No victory laps, no dramatic speeches. Just steady progress on our end, one client at a time, cold, methodical, focused. But privately deep down, I couldn't deny the quiet sense of justice settling into my bones. Not joy, not gloating, just the undeniable feeling that the universe occasionally corrected itself. By the time I closed the leaked email, the garage office felt unusually calm. My team was focused, confident, already working with the kind of precision the old company had never appreciated. Meanwhile, their empire was cracking loudly, and we hadn't pushed a single brick. The 30-day mark arrived quietly, without celebration. The way winter arrives before anyone notices the leaves have gone. I was reviewing project schedules when a notification flashed across my screen, a weekly industry report summarizing vendor performance. Normally, those reports bored me, but this one made me sit back in my chair. My former company had lost 60% of its client base. 60, not because of anything we did, not because of sabotage or secrets or stolen contracts, just gravity finally catching up to a structure built on ego instead of competence. I stared at the number for a long moment, not smiling, not gloating, just absorbing the quiet inevitability of it. Justice doesn't always arrive loud. Sometimes it shows up as a single line on a spreadsheet before I could close the tab. My phone buzzed again. Another message, then another. The names were familiar small firms, mid-sized partners, regional distributors. By noon, the flood was unmistakable. All 17 companies in the logistics chain had signed with us, all within the same 24 hours. The domino effect wasn't a theory anymore. It was happening, fast and irreversible. My team looked stunned, exhilarated, a little overwhelmed. I felt something different, calm, anchored, almost surgical. This wasn't luck. This wasn't a miracle. This was competence finally being recognized after years of being ignored. Around 3:30. My phone rang again, this time from a private number. I hesitated before answering. "Mr. Hayes," a composed voice asked. "Yes, this is the board of directors from your previous employer. We were hoping to ask you a few questions." For a second, I thought they might finally be trying to fix things. Then the woman continued, her tone smooth but strained. We'd like your honest perspective. Off the record, what exactly is happening internally? We're evaluating leadership decisions. So it wasn't the company they were trying to save, it was themselves. They weren't calling for rescue, they were calling to confirm the CEO's career was about to implode. They wanted truth, and they wanted it from someone with no reason to lie. I kept my voice steady. You already know what's happening, I said. We'd still appreciate your insight, she replied. There was a long pause, and in it, I felt every year I had given to that place, every late night, every emergency fix, every quiet contribution dismissed or claimed by someone louder. Finally, I said the only thing that felt true. There's nothing to save. They're not collapsing because of us. They're collapsing because of themselves. The line stayed silent for a beat. Then the woman exhaled. Thank you, Mr. Hayes. That's all we needed. When the call ended, I set the phone down gently. No rush of triumph, no dramatic surge of pride, just a deep, steady satisfaction settling into place. Some victories don't roar. Some victories simply confirm what the world should have seen all along. The day we opened our first real office felt nothing like the garage. No peeling paint, no buzzing coffee maker, no cardboard desks, just warm lights glowing through tall windows and the low hum of people who finally had a place that valued them. As I walked through the space past rows of desks now claimed by the same 12 people who had once stood beside me with unemployment papers, I felt a calm fullness in my chest. Not pride exactly. Something quieter, steadier. Something that felt like permission to breathe again. Everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of our comeback, handwritten notes taped to monitors, a bulletin board covered in project wins, laughter drifting from a meeting room where we used to have silence. People who had been discarded now building something stronger than anyone expected. I was still taking it in when I heard fast footsteps behind me. Dad. My son barreled into me, arms wrapped tight around my waist. I told my teacher you opened a company, he said proudly, muffled against my shirt. She said that means you're a boss now. I couldn't help it, I laughed, the sound shaking loose something heavy I'd carried for too long. Then, before I could stop it, a warm tear slid down my cheek. Not sadness, just release. When I finally stepped into the lobby, I saw it waiting for me. A wooden plaque, thick and beautifully carved, sitting on the entrance table. A gift from the first major client who trusted us enough to take the leap. Sometimes the people they throw away rebuild the world. I ran my fingers along the letters, feeling each groove like the closing line of a chapter I never meant to write. Behind me, I heard quiet voices, my team arriving, greeting each other, settling into the office they fought for without ever intending to. And in that moment, surrounded by people who chose to rebuild instead of break, I realized something simple and undeniable. We didn't just survive. We earned this. Every light, every desk, every second chance. I stepped back, looked at the glowing space around me, and let out a breath that felt like freedom. This wasn't revenge. This was rebirth. When I look back at everything we built from nothing, the lesson feels simple, sometimes losing. The place you thought you needed is exactly what frees you to build the life you actually deserve. If you've ever been pushed out, overlooked, or underestimated, trust me, you're not finished. You're just being redirected. Where are you listening from right now? I'd love to hear your story too. And if this journey moved you even a little, tap like, drop a comment, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Your support keeps these stories alive.